My name is Jessica Ramage, and today we're going to be talking about human and animal relationships through time. First, we're going to talk specifically about the domestication of animals and how that affected human civilization. The domesticating of animals was a key component in the beginning of human civilization. People initially began as nomads in order to find a proper food source. However, once animals and plants were domesticated, it allowed people to create a permanent state of residence. There were three key attributes that made specific animals ideal for domesticating. The first was that the animal must be herbivorous and fast-growing. This means that the animal would use a minimum amount of food source before it itself became the food source. Next, the animal must live in a herd. These social hierarchies allow humans to become leaders and tame the animals. Finally, the animals must be tame and willing to breed in captivity. Animals of this nature were almost impossible to find outside of Eurasia, and more specifically, the Fertile Crescent. Thus, we have the birthplace of civilization. The very first animals to be domesticated were sheep and goats in approximately 8,000 BC. It is assumed that these animals were the first because they were the easiest to tame. Goats and sheep were used for milk and meat for food, and wool for clothing. In addition, because these animals were able to digest cellulose, the hilly landside could be made of use. The next animals to be domesticated were pigs in the year 7000 BC. While also used for their meat, the highlight of the pig was its scavenging lifestyle. The pig would reduce waste in the community because it would eat just about anything. This meant it was easy and cheap to keep. Next were cows in the year 6500 BC. While cows were harder to tame, their benefits outweighed the difficulties. Like the sheep and goats, they could digest cellulose, but in addition, they could help pull plows to help with the farming and could be used for their meat, milk, and hide. Lastly were horses in the year 3000 BC. The horses had to be tamed and bred up in size, but when they were finally domesticated, they had far-reaching effects. Horses were a new source of energy for farm work. However, their biggest contribution was the fact that they could be ridden. Many riders were messengers that could deliver news at a much faster rate. This allowed for bigger empires. Further, the horse was used as a tool of warfare, creating more mobile armies. Next, we're going to watch a clip about the domestication of animals by All Histories.
Here, the hunter-gatherers lived very well, and they had learned to hunt with dogs. Dogs have been sitting in the sun with people for at least 12,000 years. They're our oldest companions on the human journey. So close, we're not even sure whether we tamed them or they tamed us. Dogs were a part of life and death. Inside a hut at Ain Malacha in Israel, archaeologists found a woman buried 11,000 years ago under the floor. Beside her head was a puppy. Whoever covered them took the trouble to place the woman's hand over the dog's body.
The Ain Malacha burials and the dogs really signal a shift in that human relationship between what had been a wild species, maybe an adversary, and now it's something that had become part of daily life, and as a matter of fact, even something that merits burial with the dead. And that's a big shift indeed.
The dogs were even more attracted to humans once they built huts.
Dog domestication comes with human sedentism, with people settling down and creating trash heaps and so on that are a lure and an attractant to the dogs. But it does set some sort of a precedent of bringing animals from the wild closer in to that human sphere of life.
The relationship with dogs must have set people thinking, why not control other animals? It would provide a ready supply of meat and cut down on the hunting. But it took a crisis to push them forwards. The Middle East was hit with over 1,000 years of drought. It was caused by a short ice age called the Younger Dryas, which brought glaciers to Europe and famine to the Fertile Crescent. It was a climate catastrophe. Deep in the sand and suffering, the hunters changed their way of life. Some people escaped to the few oases with water and good soil. Here they learnt to plant crops and became the world's first farmers. Others searched desperately for game across their traditional hunting lands. But the drought made the animals scarce. To save themselves, they took possession of their prey. The fireplaces of these hunters reveal the bones of goats, which were kept in herds. They were the very first domesticated farm animals.
The idea that civilization is linked to the domesticating of animals is not modern. In 1863, Scottish scholar John Crawford wrote his piece on the relation of domesticated animals to civilization, which was published in the Transactions of the Ethnological Society of London. Crawford proposes that without domesticated animals, humans are nothing more than savages, indistinguishable from the animals they should be taming. He compares various tribes around the world that do not domesticate animals with those that do. He shows that the more animals that have been domesticated, the more civilized the society. For example, the Andaman Islands possess no animals that can be domesticated, and they are considered to be the lowest on the hierarchy and live like savages. However, a few islands over are the Nicobars, which have domesticated the dog, the pig, and certain types of birds. While they are higher up than the Andamans, they have not domesticated larger animals, such as horses and cows, which puts them far below Western civilizations. As we learned in class, the medieval ages were a pivotal point for the human-animal relationship. Before this point, animals were kept for their usefulness rather than their companionship. However, during the Renaissance, the role of animals vastly changed. While some were still used for their practicality, many animals became pets. This is highlighted by Leonardo da Vinci's Lady with an Ermine. The woman in this portrait is holding a ferret. For the ferret to be used in the portrait, it had to be something very dear to the woman. The ferret also lacks most practical use, so we can assume that it was kept for the sake of companionship. In addition to animals becoming pets, they also became a status symbol for people. As the world was being explored, many animals were brought over from other lands. They would cost lots of money to own, and thus became a symbol of wealth.